You've spent an entire career fighting fires and rescuing the injured, sick, and dying. But that's all over now. What do you do when the sirens stop, you've hung up your gear, and you walk out of the firehouse for the last time? What do you do with your life when the smoke clears? Welcome back to the When the Smoke Clears podcast. I'm Russell Miles. I'm here with Tony Ben-Cosme. And again, we appreciate so much all of you who have supported the podcast, who have liked the podcast, who have shared encouraging words to us. That really means a lot. We really appreciate your support. And just again, we would ask whatever platform you're listening to the show on, if you would go ahead and rate the show. We would love a 5-star review, but that stuff really helps to make the podcast more discoverable for other people to find it and listen in to the wonderful things that our guests have to share. And also upcoming, we're going to be branching out into TikTok. We're going to have a TikTok page where you can see some of the clips from the show that I put on other social media. So stay tuned for that. But right now you can find us on Instagram. You can find us on Facebook. Just search for When the Smoke Clears podcast. And with all that being said, I'm going to kick it over to Tony. He's going to tell us about our guest today.
Thanks a lot, Russ. And once again, I'd like to give a heartfelt thank you to everybody that's listening. Appreciate the support. And I hope we can keep giving you some good stuff to listen to. Today's guest is, this is a very important man to me in my career. We worked partly together, not on the same shift, but in the same circles. He retired as an assistant chief. He was the operation executive chief with 36 years of service. He was heavily involved in the training academy. Matter of fact, he was we had a live burn. We do several, but he was one of the first ones to give us a live burn in downtown Silver Spring in Montgomery County in a high-rise facility with the whole department, which was a first for us and was groundbreaking at the time. He was in charge of the public safety communication center for a while. He was very important implementing a new schedule, which is 24/48 with a rotating Kelly. He was a safety officer. He was a duty chief. He basically did it all. He's been retired for a few years now. And with further ado, let me introduce to you a good friend of mine, retired Assistant Chief Michael Prete. Thanks for coming, Mike.
Tony, Russ, thank you guys so much for having me. I appreciate it.
We very much appreciate you being on the show. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for taking some time, man. I know it's retirement life is great, but you're not really on the clock anymore, so you kind of do what you want to do.
Absolutely. It's nice. It's nice to wake up in the morning and say, what is today going to bring?
Exactly.
Nice. Exactly. So you highly recommend retirement, huh?
Highly recommend retirement. Yep. Although I will admit, I miss the fire station. You know, I miss the people. I miss going on runs. Mm-hmm. But that's about it. I don't miss the politics. I don't miss the BS. So yeah, it's good life.
I think Bill Kang said it best in his interview. You miss the clowns, but not the circus.
Oh my gosh, he says that all the time, and it's so true. Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, we want to get into it with the origin story of our guest, so to speak. So tell us a little bit about where you were born, how you came up, all that good stuff.
So I was born in a hospital in D.C., but I was raised in Silver Spring, in Silver Spring proper. Nowadays, Silver Spring spans all the way out to Sandy Spring, but I was in Silver Spring proper. My dad was a police officer in D.C., and as a matter of fact, he was a deputy chief when he retired. So I grew up in a very strict Italian Catholic police officer father home. So, everything I did was scrutinized. And, when he said be in by 5 for dinner, you came in at 5 for dinner or you were locked out of the house. Yeah, he was pretty strict individual, but very giving. And I think that's what I took from him more than anything else. He was just one of the most amazing, heartfelt individuals you could ever meet. But he ruled with an iron fist, and so it was nice. I went to Catholic school there in Silver Spring at St. Bernadette's. I went to John Carroll I piecemealed my college degree with parts of my degree coming from Mount St. Mary's, part of it coming from Hopkins, and part of it coming from Arizona University. So I did a little bit of everything until I finally got my business degree. And that's about it. I got into the fire service on a bet that I lost.
Well, maybe you won. I don't know.
I ultimately I did win, but I lost the bet. I had a friend of mine who we used to decide what we were going to do for an evening's activity based on how much pizza we could eat. And this guy ate one more piece than I did. And I said, okay, what are we doing? He said, we're going up to the local firehouse, Silver Spring, and we're joining as volunteers. I said, we're doing what? And you know, as a kid, I had never thought, I couldn't even spell fire department, let alone think about joining the fire department.
Right.
My dad even took me on runs, you know, every so often when he was a duty chief in DC, you know, we'd go, I remember a wreck we ran down off of 16th Street where a truck drove through a house. And I remember body parts all over the house. And I thought, damn, I don't like parts of this crap. But so we went down to Silver Spring and we signed up and joined. And a year later, he ended up going back to school and ended up beginning his PhD and was the head of Fort Detrick in the civilian world. And I stayed in the fire service. I worked a little bit of casual labor at the time where they paid volunteers to fill in for career folks. And I did that. And one day the fire chief walked in the office and he said, "Hey, Prete, you know, we have an opening here in Silver Spring and I didn't see your name on any applications." I said, "Oh, I didn't know you had an opening." He said, "Well, come in my office." And I wrote down on a piece of paper, "I want the job." And I signed my name. And next thing you know, I was hired. Yeah. It really was as simple as that.
Wow. That's cool.
Yep.
That is amazing. I mean, if only all job interviews could be like that.
Yeah.
No, that's a little special there. That's different.
Yep. Hunter Heltzel. Yep. It was crazy.
Nice.
So, and that's how it started.
All right. Tell us a little bit about those early days in Silver Spring.
So I started in Silver Spring as a firefighter at 16. And at the time, we were really short paramedics. And so I decided to go to CRT school because there wasn't really anything as such as a paramedic. So I became a cardiac rescue technician, and they reassigned me to one engine. And then the EMTP program started, and I jumped on that, and I got in the first class of the EMTPs in Montgomery County, and I ended up passing that class painfully, but I did pass it. I ended up as a paramedic at one engine, riding the medic unit probably 80% of the time. When we talk about mentors, I had one of the greatest officers that, in my opinion, the fire service will ever know, and that's James LeMay. Jimmy LeMay was, without a doubt, the greatest supervisor I ever worked for, and I learned 90% of what I did as an officer as I grew through the fire service from Jim LeMay. And he was a great mentor. So I was very fortunate to work for Jimmy, and I had a great shift there. You know, with so many great folks. You've already interviewed John Tippett. You know, he was. We were both sergeants on that shift at a given time, and yeah, it was just a great experience. So then, you know, I started taking tests and moving through the ranks, and you know, I was a lieutenant for a while, and I worked at Company 3 on the rescue squad. I actually took Tommy Carr's place when he went to 33. And I worked as a captain, as you know, at Station 23 on the B shift, which, regardless of what Tony Coleman says, is the greatest shift of all in the entire county. And I know Tony said something about some other obscure stations, and I'm not even going to repeat them. But yeah, 23 on the B shift was absolutely the and you know, and I say that you know in you know with all due sincerity, because I mean I'm retired 11 years, almost 12 years, and I still hear from those folks all the time. I still visit with those folks. I vacation with these people. You know, I mean that's how close we were. It's a family, and it continues to be a family to this day in retirement. So yeah, a great shift. But anyhow, from there, I was a battalion chief, went to ECC for a while, a very, very short time in Battalion 2, and then went to the duty operations chief on the C shift as an assistant chief. And then finally went to work for Steve Lohr, who also was an amazing, amazing person, in my opinion. And I was his executive chief. But, when you get to that level, it's all meetings and budget and paperwork. And it was just what didn't feel like, the fire service anymore. It felt like a job. And that's when I decided it was time to maybe tap myself out. I mean, I'd done 36 years at that point. And so, at the time I'd done 33, and I jumped in the drop and did the other 3 in the drop, and that was it.
Okay. I mean, that's you're giving us the highlights, but there was a lot of stuff that happened in between there.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So you're growing up in Silver Spring. What you went to Carroll High School? I mean,
Yep.
What was it like in those early days in Silver Spring? Not growing up, you're already a volunteer. How was the academy for you? I know you had to do the academy to be. Was that like? Because they don't show the old pictures in the new academy we have now, but the old academy had a lot of the old pictures.
Yeah.
How was that academy based, and how did they work with you to get you out in the field? How did that work?
So when I was hired, I was doing casual labor, actually. So I went through the academy as a volunteer and as a casual labor employee. So when I was hired, I already had the academy under me. But at the time, the academy was a combination of career and volunteers. So there was no, weekend volunteer class and during the week career class. You went Monday through Friday to the training academy, whether you were a career person or a volunteer. And I was fortunate enough that Silver Spring allowed me to do that. And then I lived at Silver Spring at 16, so I would go back to 16 at night and sleep and on calls, and then back to the academy. And Warnie Stevens and Ed Pugh were my instructors at the training academy. And, I went through there with some great people, people like Norman Conway and Jan Ekeloff and Gary Bishop, some old timers. So yeah, it was a great opportunity to go through a program, and it wasn't as long as it is today. When I taught at the training academy, I think our training academy spanned like 28 weeks. And the classes were much bigger. I mean, my class at the training academy had 12 people in it. When Sammy Shu and I were at the training academy together as recruit instructors, our classes could be as large as 40, 50, 60 people. We would break them into different groups. So we had, 2 platoons, a morning platoon and an afternoon platoon, and we would swap the hill for the classroom and the didactic. So, it was a much different feeling than, and even today the recruit classes are large. I understand Montgomery County puts through 60, 70 people in their programs, and that's a lot of people.
Yeah, that is a lot of people. The classes are considerably bigger. I mean, they seem like they're getting smaller as of late, but yeah, overall they've gotten bigger and bigger as time went on.
Right.
So you're done your recruit class, or the short version of it, because you had a lot of the classes already.
Right.
Was there a probationary period for you when you got back to the station?
Not really.
Okay.
You came out of recruit school, and as like I said, when I finished recruit school, I was still a volunteer doing casual labor. Okay. So there was not really anything. When Silver Spring hired me, they hired me as a full-time firefighter.
All right. So once you got hired as a full-time firefighter, you just came into, was it 24/48? Is that what the shift they had? What was the
time we worked 3 days, 3 nights, and 3 off.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what's that? 12, 12, and 12? Is that the way that works?
It was, we worked from 0800 to 1700, and then 1700 to 0800. Wow. So you work 3 days a day work, 3 nights a night work, and then 3 days off. And during your 3 days off, you always work part-time. I drove a school bus like most firefighters did, or I painted houses.
How much did you get paid to start working here?
When I first started, I was getting paid $12,600, I think it was.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
12.6. Yeah, what you gonna do with all that money, man? What you?
I know, right? What did firefighters do? First thing they did when they got hired, they went out and bought a truck.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, exactly. You're not really in the fire department until you have that first truck.
Exactly.
Right. Absolutely. So you're going through Silver Spring, and what made you want to get? You're going through. So it was a firefighter 1, 2, and 3 because they had all that stuff. Because you're before the county took over.
Yeah.
So this is. I say this a lot. Silver Spring was the basis on which the county kind of built its department.
Yeah.
It built its department based on the way things were done in downtown Silver Spring.
Yeah, no, it was you were firefighter, then you were a technician, which was a driver, which basically was the master firefighter in today's world, although the technicians didn't run the stations like the master firefighters did. So you had master firefighter and then sergeant, which eventually was reclassified to lieutenant, and then lieutenant, captain, and the captains at the time were basically the battalion chiefs. And then you had assistant chief, deputy chief, and fire chief.
Okay, well, that's good. So and then that basically mimics what we got kind of now. It's sort of like what we.
Yeah, with the exception of we've gotten rid of the sergeant and we've renamed the technician master firefighter. And then we've put 3 levels of firefighter into the system, which we didn't have back then.
Okay, now when they wanted to do that, what was the thought process of wanting to do that? Why they wanted to make more levels with it? Was it better for the department as to grow, or what was the thought process?
I think that had to do more with when the county took over. They decided to implement the fire 1, 2, and 3 process, so that there were responsibilities that were given at each level, where the fire 1 basically was your entry level firefighter and, probationary firefighter. And then, you drove the ambulance to get to fire 2, and then, one heavy piece of apparatus to get to fire 3. One of the things they didn't do, which I thought was interesting, is they didn't limit a fire 2 from taking the master test. You could take the master test as a fire 2 or fire 3, which I always thought was interesting. But anyhow, and then, your master firefighter was once again a written test for lieutenant. And then once you started, moving up through lieutenant, you took a written test and you took an assessment center.
Right.
And then I think eventually they got rid of the written test for a lot of those ranks, and now it's just strictly an assessment center.
Well, for lieutenant, you still got to take the
written test,
the written part. Yeah.
Right.
Just add the assessment center on the back end.
Right.
But see, it's just interesting to me that everything that we do now is based on the way Silver Spring did everything. And so when the county took over, what was your rank?
That's a good question. I think I was a sergeant at the time, because I was still in Silver Spring. It was yes, it had to be, because I went to the training academy as a sergeant.
Okay, what was that like? Knowing, because Tippett in Tippett's podcast, he explained that this has been a movement for a while to become a fire department, not necessarily run by corporations.
Yeah.
And Silver Spring, even though they were a corporation, they were the lead in that and wanting that to happen. Is that correct?
Yeah, they were. I mean, you go back to when I first started as a firefighter, and even as a volunteer, on the outside chance that you were riding the front seat of the truck. Truck 16 in those days was not really staffed. The mechanic drove it. And then at night, it was an all volunteer piece. So it was not unusual to get in the front seat of truck 16 as the officer, as just a firefighter. And I remember sitting in the front seat, and you had 3, 4, 5 books. They were probably 4 or 5 inches thick. And those books were filled with SOPs and SOGs from your neighboring fire departments. So if you were running second due truck or, whatever, you were picking up that book and seeing, what does Bethesda want the second due truck to do? Where do they go? What does Kensington want the second due truck to do? Where do they go? What does Tacoma Park want the second? Because they were all different. And and that's what was pushing for the consolidation of the corporations, because we were so fractured. And if you said to me, go get a fan off of truck 5, I spent my day opening every compartment on truck 5 looking for a fan because they weren't in the same place as truck 16's fan or truck 19's fans. So it was, it just was very inefficient. And
Right.
at some point, it had to come together. And fortunately it did in 1988. And, it was painful. It was not an easy transition, but when it finally happened, it was a very good transition.
So what was that? It was just interesting to me that you're working for Silver Spring on Monday, and then you come back on Tuesday, and you're working for Montgomery County Fire and Rescue Services.
Yep, nothing really changed. It was seamless. As a firefighter, as a sergeant, as a lieutenant, as a captain, nothing changed. Our paychecks always came from Montgomery County, even at a corporation level. So there was really no feel. There was no difference. The only difference was they changed our uniform. Our patches, instead of saying Silver Spring, said Montgomery County Fire Rescue. But aside from that, nothing changed. Obviously, policies and procedures, there was a huge consolidation and, of policies and procedures. What'd your first engine do? What'd your second engine do? How's the uniform policy going to look? How the hair and grooming standards going to look? Code of conduct, all that stuff had to be, but we weren't involved in that at the station level. That was happening on the 12th floor.
Did they hire chiefs from other places to help you do that? Because you just can't have, did they pick chiefs from different places? Okay, this is the way our rank structure is going to look like. Because you needed a chief, you needed a.
Well, we didn't really have a chief. If you remember, we had a director at that time.
Director, yeah. But
and the
underneath
director
him
didn't really have authority over the corporations back then.
No, yeah, he didn't.
So
yeah.
It wasn't, it took a while. John Grover finally became the first actual fire chief.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
And that's when, the authority transferred to the fire chief and the director position was abolished. Once again, if you're looking at it from a firefighter perspective, it really wasn't that much different. And I'll be honest with you. I mean, I know we had chief officers on the 12th floor, but I don't really remember, how their roles changed when we went from a corporation-driven department to a fire rescue department. I just don't remember.
Okay. All right. So I know that there was a big, when I got hired, there was a big scuttlebutt about some of the guys there were guys that were on the edge of getting ready to retire, I guess. And some guys were debating whether they should leave or not. Did they offer early outs to people? Is that true? Or
yeah, they did. Yep, there were early outs. I want to say there was 2 rounds of early outs that they offered at that time to allow people to leave early if they wanted to.
You weren't nowhere near retirement.
Nowhere near that.
So it wasn't even something that you thought about.
No.
But some of those people that did take their early out ended up regretting doing that, right? It's my understanding because
you know what? I don't know for sure. I don't know if I heard that or not.
Yeah, I've heard some people say that, but I mean, how do you know? I mean, it's 100%. I mean, you can't tell. You have to talk to somebody that retired.
Yeah,
and a lot of them retired, and it's been such a long time,
right,
since that happened. All right, so you promote your sergeant when you get there. You get to the academy. You're running. You're helping run all the recruit classes.
Yep.
How long were you to the academy?
Well, I was at the academy officially for 2 years. But the beauty of working at the training academy is once you work there, you get the opportunity to go back as an adjunct instructor.
Right.
And I worked just about every recruit class until I made battalion chief.
Wow.
So I had the opportunity to touch many, many folks, and I loved every minute of it. Because I was always up there as a primary instructor. So I was up there on all my days off, and I was detailed during the day when I was working shift work. Mm-hmm. And it gave me the opportunity to, work every recruit class. Most of the time we were, on the Hill. So we were involved in the activities on the Hill. Basically, it was 3 of us. It was Mark Davis, who did the didactic, and it was Greg DeHaven and myself who did the Hill. And we just ran, the 3 of us ran the training academy at the time. Even though you had full-time instructors up there, they did all the administrative things. They took care of the discipline and, and all the things that go with being an administrator. And we did most of the teaching, which was great for us because we didn't have to worry about any of the ancillary things. We just had to worry about skills, and it was, an opportunity.
Okay. So you leave, you get ready to get out. Where do you go? You can go anywhere you want when you leave the academy.
Well, interesting you say that because I was promoted at the time. I was a lieutenant, and I had an opportunity. They said you go anywhere you want, but the only place that they had open was 13.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. It's right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'd always been in a busy station, and now I'm going to 13 where you watch the grass grow.
Yeah.
And
rural area.
I went to 13, and I went and saw John Grover on the 12th floor, and I said, hey, I mean, I've given you all these years, as a paramedic, training academy, and I'm at 13. And he said, well, we're about to put lieutenants at 3. Would you go to 3 on day work? And I said, you're killing me, Smalls. But I said, okay. So I ended up at 13 on day work. Eventually, they changed that over to shift work. And I was there with Charlie Elgin, and I don't remember who the other lieutenant was. But anyhow, so we ended up going to shift work. And then the opening came up at 23 on B shift. And so I ended up putting in for the transfer there and ended up landing at 23 and spent probably 9 years there.
Oh, that's cool, man. So, okay, get back into the scheduling because you get the 3, 3, and 3. You're doing that. The county takes over. Is that when you went to 2448, or how long was the transition to 2448?
Interesting. I was at one engine, and they decided that they were going to go to. We ran a call one day over in Tacoma Park, and basically I was asleep on my feet. And this person was in a 3rd-degree heart block, and I'm in the elevator, and I look down, and I'm thinking, holy crap, this guy has got oxygen on him, and they've got an IV in him, but we haven't done anything else for him, and I don't even know how I got here. And so treated the patient, got him to the hospital, positive outcome. But I got off work that morning, and I went and saw the fire chief, and it was still Silver Spring at the time. And it was before transition. And I said to him, I almost killed somebody last night because you got us on this, 3, 3, and 3, and we don't sleep like everyone else does. When you're on your 3 nights of night work, you're up 8 times a night on that medic unit, and It's unhealthy. So he decided, you know what, I'm going to put the paramedics on 2448 and everybody else will stay on 3, 3, and 3.
Oh,
wow.
So,
that's the beginning.
You say wow, but when the firefighters are jealous of you, they have their ways. And so when they come in on their first night of night work and they're all gun ho, and you're working, you're the downside of your 24-hour shift, and you've already been out the door 12 times. And, they're like, hey, we're going to clean the bathrooms. We're going to clean the bunk room. And by the way, you're going to do all this by yourself. It's like, dude, stop. But yeah, it was bad. And it was the first couple months of that before the rest of the department turned over to 2448. And
so do you know any other corporation was doing 2448? Or are you guys the first one to do it?
We were the first ones to do it, to my knowledge.
Out of town.
Yeah.
That is crazy. Yep. So that's just a whole. So then when the county took over, they just implemented your 2448.
I think. I don't want to say that to be sure because there may have been other corporations that were already doing it, but I wasn't paying attention. I was, worried about my little world, Yeah,
you're right. There might have been some other ones. I think maybe there was a movement to, I'm sure you weren't the only one that said, man, this is crazy the way we're doing this. I think Gaithersburg also had a similar schedule. I think there were 4, 4, 4, and 4. So basically same setup.
Right.
And they were kind of, any corporations at that time kind of communicated with each other. At least the chiefs did.
Yeah.
So if it worked for you, they probably implemented it shortly thereafter.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Okay. So you would say without a doubt that 3, you enjoyed 3, you enjoyed the academy, but 23 was your favorite station.
No doubt.
Not even
Well,
close.
I don't want to take anything away from One Engine, because One Engine, at my time at One Engine, was a family too. It was just that I was very young and didn't have a lot of influence in that family. And Jim LeMay made it a family atmosphere, which is where I learned it from.
Oh, really?
So I would say my two favorite stations were One Engine and 23, but by far 23 only because it was something that I took with me into retirement. I mean, I talk to the guys from One Engine every now and again, but not nearly like I see the folks from 23, all the time.
Yeah, I know you were telling us a little bit about your fond connections you have with the members of 23 back when you were working, and even to this day, people you stay in touch with to this day. Tell us about those days at 23. Like what made it so rich and worthwhile for you to be there?
Well, the people, for starters. Everyone there knew their job, and they did their job very well. And that's just not the B shift. I think all three shifts at 23 always performed in a level that was to be applauded. There was just a very high caliber of training. The folks there knew their jobs. I was working at the training academy part-time. So because I was working the training academy part-time, the guys on the B shift at 23 were dragged up to the training academy all the time to participate in training. So the recruits would actually come to 23 on nights and weekends to practice their skills. So the folks, always were doing those skills. And even though they were basic skills, they're important skills. When was the last time you tied a Stokes basket? Guys at 23 on B shift would do it every weekend with the recruits. When was the last time you did that on a call? Man, you think back in your careers. How many times have you done it in your career? Once, twice. So, when you say, well, yeah, but they were basic skills. Yeah, they're basic skills, but they're basic skills that you don't use all the time.
No, absolutely.
So, that the call volume, although after a while, as you get older, the call volume starts to get a little bit harder, which is one of the reasons why I decided one of the reasons I decided to step out and take the battalion chief test, because I had an Italian chief father who was beating me with a stick almost every day saying, boy, why aren't you a chief? And I was like, okay, I'll take the test. But I pushed that off for a long time. And so we finally, one day I was up on the 12th floor talking to Chief Guercio, and I was complaining about something. And he said, Prete, you've been a captain long enough. If you want to make change, if you want to see change, take the test. Don't come into my office and whine. And I thought, well, that's a good point. So I decided to take the battalion chief test. And then once you get the battalion chief, you're like, well, might as well keep going, so you just keep going.
Yeah, no, that's good. So what was it like to promote all the way through as you're promoting up, especially even 23? You become the battalion chief. I remember you as a battalion chief. I remember you as an assistant. That change must have been hard for you, because you're I remember, because I worked on the A shift at 23 on the ticket. And you guys were always like, it seemed like, so I mean, 23 the A shift was good, but you guys, to me, seemed like were very, very close knit.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? 23, it was fun working with there. I had a bunch of guys that were cool and we did a good job. But you guys, would do stuff like go on vacations, and it was just a family environment.
Yeah.
And that's tough to go from that to being in that buggy by yourself.
Yeah. No doubt. No doubt. I mean, battalion chief was an easier transition only because it was all new. I go to the 911 center and I'm looking at computers and, technology and, just a different world, totally different world. It took a long time for me to learn and made a lot of mistakes. Oh my gosh, I made a lot of mistakes. But, once again, I tried to invoke that family value on those people as well. When I got to the shift chief's office, that was hard because I was upstairs at 20 and I knew I wasn't part of that environment. Although on Sundays, when we worked on Sundays, I would go down and cook for the shift
Yeah.
because I
Right.
just missed it so much,
Mhm.
but it was never the same, once you leave the station, it just wasn't the same.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
it's
can
a
imagine.
solitary. Yeah.
Yeah, especially at 20, because 20 is such a small firehouse. So it's
Yeah.
like you're right there, like you're so close, but you're so far.
Right. Right. And you don't really go down to interact because you don't want to get in the way of the station officer. You don't want to be seen as interfering. So you kind of stay in your own little world upstairs, and you do your rounds, you go to, you go on calls, but unless it's a first due 20 call, you're not really the incident commander unless something's really going wrong or unless it's a really big incident. So you're going around patting backs and saying, hey, how you doing, good job. It's superficial, and it's
Yeah,
not,
yeah. Yeah, it's
you
kind
know
of tough
and it's
changing it up.
administrative. It's an administrative operations position.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So that's it. You do the how long were you a battalion chief?
Only 2 years.
2 years. And then you go
Yeah.
to assistant chief and you're the doc. You're the
Yep.
doc, I want to say on A shift, correct?
C shift.
C shift.
Yeah.
Now you're the C shift doc, and I remember this like it was yesterday because I worked as a float lieutenant on C shift, on B shift. I guess you're working overtime this day or whatever. There was a fire in 23's area. 23's first due. The engine goes up to the second floor. The fire's in the first floor. They fall through the floor.
Yep.
You come in, they have command, and I know shortly thereafter, after command, and they do a mayday and all that, you appear on the scene, and I remember your voice so calm and collected, and you reset the whole thing. I remember you reset the whole fire. You couldn't tell where people were at, you couldn't tell what people were doing. You just said, everybody out, we're gonna start from scratch.
Actually, Tony, I showed up as an off duty. I didn't have anything to do with the incident itself.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I
Mm.
showed up only because it was my former shift, and I
Okay.
heard the call go
All
out,
right.
and
All
I
right.
came down there. So yeah, that
I
wasn't me.
thought you were working.
No, no, because I ended up going to the hospital to check on the guys.
Okay. I thought I heard your
Because they
voice on that call. I know you were there,
yeah,
and someone said that you were on command. I
yeah,
got there late. I
right,
had gotten there off the task force.
right,
Yeah, so you responded because it was your old shift.
right, right.
You went, okay.
Yeah, I came from home.
Wow. Wow. There's been a few of those. Not many,
Yeah,
thank God.
yeah. There was a fire we had in Kensington like that, where we had a report of 2 people trapped, and the incident commander was a volunteer incident commander, and he kind of panicked. And as I was driving down the road, I could hear, we're burning up in here, we're burning up in here, we're burning up in here. And if you're familiar with Project Mayday, and you ever listen to that or read any of their data, you'll find that we're burning up in here is a precursor to Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. And I'm listening to this on the radio, and I did evacuate that building and that house as soon as we got out. And right after they got out, the entire first floor ended up flashing on them. Fortunately, we had just come out of the building. Nobody got hurt. Both civilians ended up dying, but they were dead long before we got there anyhow. And but that's an incident where we did call a timeout and say, hey, this isn't going well. We need to
Okay.
regroup.
So the incident I was referring to, yes, it was because memory doesn't serve me well at times. I remember you being there,
Yeah.
and I remember them resetting the fire. So who was the battalion chief on that?
Don't remember. I know Alan Hine was the incident commander.
Okay, all right. Okay, that makes sense. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, you run a bunch of these calls. Is there any one besides that one in Kensington that kind of really stands out in your career?
I think probably Congressional Lane when I was a dock chief, and a car drove into the gas meter and exploded.
Yes.
And I remember getting there thinking, okay, I walk up to the guy who's sitting in the car and I said, hey, you got to get out of your car. It's on fire. And I'm watching this building burn, and the first vehicle that shows up is truck 3 or it's 703, and I'm like, well, they don't have any water. And the second vehicle that showed up is Tower 23, and I'm like, well, they don't have any water. And this fire is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it wasn't until finally 723 got there with their engine, that they were able to start putting water on the fire. But at that time, the fire had gotten into the apartment, and that was at that point, it was like, okay, let's stop this from moving any further. So we ended up getting into exposures and stopping the fire from going laterally, horizontally, because it was just burning ferociously with a gas-fed fire at that point. And we did a good job. I mean, once the engine got there, they ended up saving the adjoining buildings and just burned the heck out of the initial building. That fire definitely stands out. I had another one in Potomac, similar to the house fire in Kensington, where the tactics were just terrible and very bad decisions were made. And these firefighters, tried to get into this house with a garage fully involved instead of putting water on the garage and resetting the fire. And as a result, as soon as they opened their door, that front door, they created a flow path, and they ended up getting trapped on the stairwell. And fortunately, we were able to pull them out before anybody got injured and reset the fire. And we ended up putting the fire out. But, so the fires, those are the fires that scared me, the ones where, we put people in harm's way where they shouldn't be in harm's way.
It sounds like for both of those calls, it's a good thing that no firefighters were seriously injured and everybody walked away.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's one of the things you tell chief officers today. It's okay to call a timeout. It is all okay. They do it in sports all the time. Why can't we do it in the fire service? There's no harm in calling a timeout and starting over.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So looking at your career, I mean, you definitely had the privilege of serving in a lot of different ranks, all the way up pretty high to the assistant chief level, right?
Yes.
Yes. So at which rank would you say you had the most influence?
Captain.
Captain? Why is that?
Because I was able to impart a lot of my own philosophies on the people that I worked with and that came through the station. I had influence for 24 hours on these people. I was able to, show them compassion. I was able to show them the discipline when it was necessary. I was able to teach them, to mentor them, and hopefully build them as they progress through the ranks, so that they could take some of my philosophies with them, as they progressed, and obviously developing their own personality, but keeping some of the basic fundamental practices and foundations that I had instilled in them as they went up through the ranks. So yeah, without a doubt, Captain was the most influential.
Yeah, I can see that. I actually had my first captain when I was a rookie, Captain Mark Conway. He told me pretty much that exact same thing. He said, "Captain is the rank where you can have the most, the last rank where you can have the most direct influence on the people that you work with."
And Mark was one of my masters at one time at 23. Another very good firefighter.
Yeah. Conway. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He was good.
So yeah. So that's awesome. So you're going to have all this influence over the years that you're moving up in the ranks. And you said as you moved up higher in the chief level, it got to be more administrative and further away from the actual firefighting part of the deal, of the job. And so tell us about when you really started thinking seriously about retiring.
Probably when I knew that Steve Lohr was going to retire, and I decided that I didn't know that I wanted to move any higher, and I knew that my name was being tossed around a little bit, and I knew I had to take the division chief test, and I just didn't know that that was a step that I wanted to take. And then if I took the division chief test, would I, someday maybe be considered for the fire chief position? And I knew I didn't want to do that. I remember my dad once told me, because he retired as second in command with
Mhm.
DC Police Department, and his name was mentioned to take over for Maurice Cullinane when he retired as the police chief. And I remember my dad coming home and saying, "I told the mayor that he should take my name off the list because there's no way that I can say yes to people that are wrong and no to people that are right." And I thought,
Mm.
Oh,
wow,
wow. Well
yep,
said.
yep. So I decided that was, and that's who I was. There was no way I could do that either. So that's when I thought it was time to put my papers in.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's that top cop or top fire chief position.
Yeah.
It's a multifaceted and very hard to do.
Yep. No
Yeah.
doubt. No doubt.
Yeah,
I can
but
imagine when you're beholden to people who have interests at stake that do not necessarily align with what the fire department is all about or what's
no,
best
yeah.
with the men and
Yep.
women who are serving, that then you got to start asking yourself some serious questions.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So tough position.
Gotcha. So you make the decision to retire. You said you got into the drop, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So tell us about that last shift that you had on duty. Do you remember that?
I do. And it was very uneventful. I didn't want the fanfare. I didn't want the station visit. I had done a lot of the moving around station to station, working as a doc in the Kelly position before I had left. So I had an opportunity to visit all the stations, and I tried to work all the shifts and say goodbye. But on the last day, I literally took my vehicle up to EOB, or no, I took it to National Geographic, to the new headquarters,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
I parked it. And Gary Cooper picked me up and took me home, and we got drunk, and that was it.
Had a few drinks.
Yep,
Celebratory.
yep, and that was it.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
So then when you woke up the next morning, besides maybe having a little bit of a headache, what else were you thinking and feeling?
Well, I had a job. I mean, I knew I was going to keep working. I was teaching. I already had been doing the teaching prior to my retirement. On my days off, I was working for a company up in Pennsylvania, up in Scranton, and I was traveling all over the U.S. teaching, classes to different fire departments. And so I knew I was going to continue to do that, which I did and still do. So I mean, it wasn't like I was waking up with nothing to do, forlonging with what woe is me, what's next. I knew I had a purpose, and not to sound corny, but I have this passion in retirement to reduce, eliminate if possible, and I know that's never possible, but to reduce line of duty deaths and injuries in the fire service through teaching and through speaking. And I've dedicated myself to that and take every opportunity I can to promote that, because the fire service is picture of the word insanity. We do the same thing over and over and over again, expecting the same result, and at some
Right.
point we've got to break that chain,
Right.
because it doesn't make any sense why we do things that we know are gonna hurt us and are gonna kill us. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
100%. I have two questions. One, just along that line real quick. What do you think is the hardest part about breaking that chain and changing a behavior that's so ingrained in the fire
Yeah,
service?
well, I'll sum it up in one word: culture. Fire departments have culture, and they believe their culture, that culture is what they need to live by. They need to, what drives them, and they don't want to change that culture. It's a macho. It's a an adrenaline. It's I have to be the hero, and we forget that a hero is a sandwich. It's not. It's not a badge of honor to wear on a casket. We all want to do the best we can do, and we all want to save lives. And when there's savable lives, by all means, we need to save those savable lives. But when we're risking our lives for incidents where there are no savable lives, there's no reason, to be committing to these fires. I get on the soapbox sometimes, and I know people get tired of hearing me, but it just, at some point, we've got to think about, what's best for our people. We talk about saving lives, and firefighters' lives are just as important as civilian lives. I look at the fire in York, Pennsylvania, the piano fire a few years back, and it was a vacant building that they went defensive on for hours and hours and hours and hours, and the fire finally went out. And the building took tons and tons and tons of water and showed signs of fatigue on the day of the fire. And the next day, 2 firefighters were sent down, or a crew was sent down, and the firefighters were sent into the building to check for hotspots, and the building collapses and kills 2 firefighters.
Why do you need to check for hotspots? Yeah.
2 days after the fire, how do you explain that to somebody's family?
Yeah.
And a building today, if you go by there, is a parking lot. So we killed 2 firefighters to save a parking lot. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense sometimes. And not, and I'm sure that chief who ordered those people down there had good reason to do it. I'm certainly not second guessing them. I'm just saying that those are the sort of things that makes you question why do we do these things sometimes? Why are we risking firefighter lives when firefighter lives are just as important as civilian lives? So,
yeah. And I think in anything, whenever there's a strong culture, whether it's the fire department or any job or any civilization anywhere, I think anyone who strives to change that culture, even if it's for the better, initially they're going to get probably mocked and scorned and looked down on and made fun of. But then when the culture finally does change, however long it takes, I think that person is the real hero, even if they may never get the credit they deserve.
No, absolutely.
They never get the credit, because by the time the change actually gets implemented, they're long gone, because everything is so slow.
Yeah.
And it needs to be routine. I was on Tippett's podcast. I mentioned about how we used to, the blowback for him for wanting to eliminate gear inside the the firehouses, or wearing a seatbelt on fire truck. I mean,
absolutely.
This is basic stuff. We're not talking about firefighter. We're talking about just functioning as regular people.
I remember
go ahead.
When John was the station commander on captain on A shift, he would implement all kinds of things. And, behind his back, people were like, what the heck is he doing? Why do we need these safety goggles? Why do we need these hearing protections? But you know what? Think about it. Today, people don't do those things without those safety protections because it makes sense. It just makes sense. And, in John's defense, all he was trying to do was protect people from injury.
Yeah, I know that's all he was trying to do. Yeah.
Right. But yet, people mock.
Supersedes. Yeah. Culture supersedes safety.
Yeah. So, that's, and it's a hard nut to crack, without a doubt, because firefighters are proud and rightfully so, and we do a lot of good, and we all want to save the victims. We all want to get in there and do our best. And I'm all about that. But when you have, a structure that is obviously unsurvivable, we've got to think about, okay, let's think about what impact this is going to have on our firefighters.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. Everything from gear cleaning all the way up.
Oh, all the way up. To ask a firefighter about their protective clothing. Do they understand their limitations? Most firefighters don't care about TPP or THL. To them those are just letters in the alphabet. They really don't have a real strong idea of what their gear is designed to protect from, how long they can sustain high heat before they start to receive second-degree burns. These are all things that we don't pay attention to, and we should, because that's part of what we do. We're professionals. Whether you're a volunteer or career firefighter, it doesn't matter. We're all professionals. We should be paying attention to those things so we understand how they protect us and what they do for us.
Absolutely. So when you retired, you said you had a job already to go in and teaching with
Yep.
the company that you're with now. So you, even though you were out of the service, you were still in the firefighting world in a way. So as you transition to doing more of that full time and stepping away from uniform service, how else did your life change? Like what major things changed for you?
It's a lot harder to stay current when you're out of the uniform service. So it means a lot more studying, a lot more attending conferences so you can stay current, a lot more learning so that when you are teaching, you're teaching today's practices and not yesterday's practices. So I think you're a lot more focused on staying current, whereas when you're in a uniform position, the staying current just comes naturally because it's happening as you evolve in your uniform position. Nobody's coming to you behind the scenes and saying, "Hey, did you learn this or did you learn that?" It's just happening in the uniform position. Whereas once you're in a civilian position, you're not practicing those things, and so you have to study it, you have to work at it, and so that and the other thing is taking time for yourself, which is something that you don't get an opportunity to do when you're in a uniform service. I love to travel. I've been all over the world, and I'll continue to travel all over the world because I love it, and because I'm teaching here in the United States, I'm getting to visit every state in the United States at some point to teach programs. And when I'm there, I take the time to learn about those cultures and to learn about those environments because that's important. And it's amazing. I will say this, absolutely amazing when you go outside of the metropolitan Washington areas or, the New York, Boston, California, when you get into these rural environments and you see how much these people do with so little. And then you think about, what we do we have the luxury, of having so much. It's just an amazing, it's an eye-opening experience. You learn a lot.
Oh, I bet. I mean, I can only imagine what some of the smaller departments that like they don't have the luxury of getting their apparatus replaced like every 10 years
Right.
or so, or they may
Yep.
not have a second set of gear to switch into after a fire, or
Right.
whatever tools they have, that they just have to make them work for
Right.
however long they can. So
Yeah.
we're
I,
very fortunate.
I tease these people when I teach these classes. I said Montgomery County stopped carrying water on their fire trucks years ago. We just put so many people on the fire ground. We all stand around a fire and inhale and suck the oxygen out of the air, and that's how the fires go out.
Yeah, we just stomp it out. You just
Yeah.
jump on it.
Yeah.
We're fortunate. We're still growing too. We're still
Yeah, we're
growing.
blessed. We absolutely are blessed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you all these years, there's another transition that happened, and you were kind of there at the forefront of this when we went from and this happened around the country, but you actually saw it in real time, was the actual going from a fire department to an EMS fire together, then to an all hazard. I mean,
Yeah.
we go to everything.
We
We
do.
don't hold calls.
We,
We don't question what the emergency is. You tell us what's going on, and
right.
we go and we figure it out, and
Yeah.
we make the adjustments, and we decide what resources are needed or what needs to be taken care of.
Yeah.
What was that like?
And we do it in-house,
Yes. What was that like? What was that like? That transition? How big of a change that was?
Well, it was a big change because if you think about it, when Montgomery County first started, we were a fire rescue department. And we always did EMS with the exception of Bethesda. I mean, when I say exception of Bethesda, I'm talking about transport EMS. Everybody did it. And, then, USAR came along. And the next thing you know, we were doing, at one point, we had a high angle rescue
Yeah,
team.
we did. Yep.
And special evacuation tactical team, which we were a member of for a while, and then the police ended up taking that over, and then hazmat came in. So I mean, it was an amazing transition.
Yeah, that's crazy that you
Yeah.
saw all that, and you know, I don't ask too many people because most of the people have done this, but were you full turnout gear with your pants, or did you have the jeans, they issued the jeans and the
Didn't issue the jeans. You wore whatever pants you were wearing, and you wore 3/4 boots pulled up.
3/4 boots? Yeah. What were the telltale signs you're in something that's a little hot, that it was time to turn it around? Because right now, obviously, we're so protected, and it's a good thing, but that's also kind of part of the problem, that we might go a little, stay longer than we should,
Yeah.
deeper than we should, way deeper than you would go if you have 3/4 pants, because you feel the heat right away.
3/4 boots and no Nomex hood. It was just helmet, collar up. So you felt it on your ears. You knew you were getting into the heat. I can't tell you how many times I came out with blisters on my ears and my sideburns burned, because that's where, the strap of the helmet came through and it held the heat in right there. Not necessarily 3/4 boots tell the sign, because that was the lowest point in your body, but you definitely knew it without the Nomex hood.
So, telling your story, it's been great. What's it like now, waking up in the morning and looking that individual in the face? What gets you up in the morning? What motivates you now, brother?
I think my motivation for getting up in the morning is knowing that I'm still having an impact in the fire service. I'm between teaching, and working for John Tippett with the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. I feel that I can still have an impact on the fire service, on my family. I have a grandbaby now, and
Congratulations.
that's certainly
congrats.
something that motivates me. Because she's just the most adorable thing in the world, and I just can't wait to spoil the heck out of her once she becomes an older human.
Yeah.
So yeah, just those are the things that motivate me. Certainly my family, my wife, my kids, my grandchild. Yeah, I
Great.
get up for
Great.
them.
Yeah, man. So looking back, what would you tell the very young person, the if you can go back in time and talk to the younger you, the first day he's walking in, and you're the salty guy, what would you tell the young Prete as he walking in the door?
I would say pay attention. I would tell them to take care of their bodies. I would say to them that this is a great profession, and they need to embrace that. The job is more than a paycheck. It's more than retirement benefits, but it is a family, and it's an opportunity to be part of something much larger than them. And they have an opportunity to make an impact. They have an opportunity to impact the lives. It's not about them. It's about the community that they serve. You have to understand that when somebody dials 911, they're not doing it because they know you're eating dinner. They know they're doing it because it's the worst day in their life, and they're looking for someone to fix it, to make it right. And so you can't take it personally. But yeah, get all in and take classes, learn as much as you can, take care of your body, and by all means embrace the family.
Awesome.
Right.
Awesome.
Yeah, man. That's great.
And in a similar vein, what would you say to the older salty firefighter who's getting ready to get out of here in a few years? Maybe they just got into the drop. Maybe they're thinking about retiring. What would you say to them?
I guess I would say have a plan. Know what life after the fire service looks like. I think most people get into the drop and they're done. Either their bodies have told them they're done, or psychologically they feel that they're done. But have something on the other side. Stay involved, even if it's just lunch with your fellow shift mates or coffee with an old partner from the medic unit or whatever it may be. But stay involved, stay engaged, and do things that make you happy. Because some people, when they retire, I remember Mark Pebble told me once, I retired and they forgot about me. And I thought, wow, that's sad. Nobody should ever be forgotten about. And that's why I'm blessed to have the community that I have to this day, not only with the retired guys, but the active folks. Those folks that have come to my house and worked on promotional exam stuff, and those folks that, I still talk to today on a daily basis who are still engaged. Those things are important in retirement, and otherwise you wither away, and you don't want that. You want to enjoy your retirement. We're fortunate to retire young, so let's enjoy the time we have left.
Absolutely,
absolutely, man.
That is great.
That is great, man. Fantastic. Purpose. We all need a purpose, and retirement. It's just a chapter in your life. Time to close that chapter. The book's it's not done written.
Yeah.
So just understand this. You close this chapter, open another one.
Yeah, no doubt.
So one final question for you, and then we'll land this plane.
Okay.
So when you wake up in the morning and you look at that guy looking back at you in the mirror, what do you think about that guy, and what do you say to him?
Wow. Well, I see someone who I believe has had a good career. Somebody who has made an impact, I hope. And I say to them, keep plugging, keep moving forward, keep spreading, your message, because maybe someday someone will listen, and it may have an impact on, some future firefighter somewhere in some remote city or some remote fire station in some podunk city in the U.S.
Yeah, man. I usually tell people at the end of this podcast, because, their family sometimes tell them, or people haven't told them, or maybe they forgot. Listen, man, you've influenced a lot of people in the positive way. You count me one of those guys that you've influenced in a positive way. Your words, and not just your words, your actions. Okay. You can, you can say something, but the way you do it is the way people see who you are. And it's been a positive all the way around. I want to thank you again for being on our podcast. And brother, thank you for your career. You did good, man. You did real good.
Tony, Russ, I appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity. I hope I didn't hurt anybody's feelings today with anything I said, but anything I said, I meant just with the intent of hopefully, having an impact on, on them.
No, you have, and you continue to. Yeah,
so thank you. Thank you guys very much. Appreciate it. And keep doing what you're doing, because this is a great opportunity for people to hear, some of the stories from the past, and, hear a couple of us older people who, have been, long gone and forgotten, and, give you an opportunity to get to know us a little better. So I thank you for this opportunity. You guys are doing a great job.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And then I can say, I never had the pleasure of working with you while you're on the job, but the help that you gave me last year in preparing for the Lieutenant Assessment Center was invaluable. I don't know if I'm sitting here talking to you as a lieutenant without your help. So thank you so much. You've had an impact on my career for sure.
Russ, honestly, I love doing it. It gives me purpose. That it absolutely gives me purpose. So I'm glad I can still have an impact.
Awesome.
Great.
Yeah, man. Appreciate it.
So don't sign off just yet. We'll have some more things to say for you offline.
Okay.
But,
cool.
Assistant Chief Mike Prete, thank you so much for sitting down with us and talking with us. We really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you, guys.
Take care, Prete.
Thanks for listening to the When the Smoke Clears podcast. If you want to get in touch with us, you can find us on Instagram at When the Smoke Clears podcast, or you can email us at whenthesmokeclears8@gmail.com. That's when the smoke clears and the number 8 at gmail.com.